The young master of the Silas family, Silas, got his head injured when he visited the film crew. After waking up, his memory became confused and he mistakenly regarded me as his girlfriend. He put himself in danger for me, set off fireworks all over the city for me, and presented his most sincere heart to me. However, just when I finally fell for him, his memory returned to normal, and then he forgot everything he had done for me. Silas and I were sent to the hospital together. There was an accident of the collapse of stage props on the set. The iron frame happened to hit Silas, who was passing by behind me, and I was pushed under him by him. Only my cheek was slightly scratched. In everyone's eyes, Silas was injured because he was protecting me. So when he woke up with his memory in confusion and mistakenly regarded me as his girlfriend, this became the most powerful evidence. In fact, before that, the only interaction between him and me was at a banquet half a year ago. Because I was drunk, I mistook him for someone else on the way to the lounge led by the waiter and directly went to hold Silas' hand, who was standing in front of the French window. The impression was very vague. I only remembered that I said a lot of words to him, but I didn't remember what they were. Until my agent showed up, tremblingly pulled me away, and then told me worriedly when I sobered up that I had caused a big trouble. After all, the last person who deliberately got close to Silas under the pretext of being drunk had disappeared from the entertainment circle. Since then, I had been on tenterhooks for a long time and would also deliberately avoid all the occasions where he might appear. Unless there was no way to avoid it, such as when he happened to visit the film crew where I was filming. I actually didn't know who he came to visit. I could only try my best to stay away from him. Unfortunately, the twists and turns of fate were always unexpected. Because of an accident, not only did we fall together, but also he mistakenly thought that I was his girlfriend. When I carefully, gently, and repeatedly emphasized, "Silas, you've really mistaken me for someone else," he just looked at me with soft eyes. Then gently touched my face with his fingertip and asked, "Does the wound still hurt?" To be honest, this put me in a difficult and helpless situation. So after sighing slightly, I compromised and said, "It doesn't hurt anymore." And he wasn't annoyed about the fact that I didn't admit that I was his girlfriend no matter what. He would only ask me, "Did I make you unhappy before?" Look, he didn't even have his previous memories, but stubbornly believed that I was his girlfriend. Later, when he was discharged from the hospital, probably worried that I would be unhappy, he would avoid others every time he came to see me on the film crew. But actually, everyone knew it well. I could only be glad about his identity. Without his permission, no media would take the risk of offending him to release photos and information about him. My agent had changed from being panicked at first to pretending to be calm and finally accepting it calmly. She had already started to excitedly persuade me, "Arya, why don't you just be with Silas? You don't know how many people want to get involved with him. Since the opportunity has come to you, don't waste it." That's right. The name Silas was almost equivalent to a shortcut in the eyes of countless people. But I still shook my head slightly at her. "I'm a fake girlfriend. What's fake will always be fake and will never become real. One day, his memory will return to normal. Besides, I don't like him at all." The moment I finished speaking, I suddenly caught sight of a figure not far away. He had broad shoulders and a narrow waist and was tall and straight. It was Silas. In his hand, he was carrying a portion of my favorite jasmine flower jelly. I didn't know whether Silas had heard what I said or how much he had heard, but he didn't show any abnormal behavior. As usual, after handing the things in his hand to my agent, he gently said to me, "I happened to pass by here and dropped in to have a look." Although I didn't want to accept the identity of this fake girlfriend, I didn't want to offend him either. After all, no one knew whether he would come to trouble me after his memory returned to normal. So I wouldn't examine carefully whether his reason was true or false every time. After having more contact with him, I found that the real him was different from what was rumored. It was said that Silas, the young master of the Silas family, was cold, ruthless, tough in means, and decisive in dealing with things, but in fact, he had always shown the elegance and demeanor of a noble family towards me, and when I occasionally agreed to have dinner with him, he would be like a child getting candies, with joy in his eyes. However, I didn't know whether he really had a girlfriend and then mistakenly let me take that position, or whether he didn't have a girlfriend at all and just had a false memory that I was his girlfriend out of thin air. No one knew the answer to this question. I also took him to meet some friends who studied medicine and repeatedly confirmed his condition. The answers were all the same. It might never get better, or it might get better tomorrow. If there were old memories or old things to stimulate him, the chance of getting better might be higher. So relying on the little experience I got from TV dramas, when I met Silas and his friends at a party not long after that, I tactfully asked them whether Silas had any female friends he was close to before the accident. At that time, they already knew that Silas had mistaken me for his girlfriend, but they all took the stance of onlookers watching the fun. Hearing my question, one of them, who was probably also a rich young master, shook his wine glass and chuckled. Who knows? After all, he had stayed abroad for so many years. He was hit stupid not long after he returned to China. No one expected that this accident would make him become so love-struck. I sighed and quietly glanced at Silas, who was lazily leaning on the wine-red sofa not far away. His eyes were slightly closed, and his emotions couldn't be seen. Later, after the party ended, while I was waiting for my agent in the lobby and absent-mindedly looking at the big screen on the opposite wall, a shadow fell in front of me. At first, he didn't say anything and just looked at the video on the big screen with me. It was a live interview of the top singer Phoenix after he released his new song. The host asked him about the meaning of his new song, Wei Lai, and then asked him who he most wanted to let listen to this song. Finally, after getting his answer that it was the person he loved very much, the host asked Phoenix to call that person on the spot and sing to her softly. Among the screams of the audience, my mobile phone, which had been on mute on the marble table, suddenly lit up with a string of familiar numbers. It was at this time that Silas spoke. He looked down at me condescendingly, with a bit of loss in his tone. Is it because of him? So you don't want to be with me? After the incoming call display lit up and then went out for 3 times, I blinked my slightly sour eyes and somewhat stubbornly corrected him. It's not that I don't want to. It's that the nature of this relationship is fake. Just like Phoenix's liking was fake from the very beginning. Until now, I would still occasionally be trapped in the nightmare of that summer afternoon and couldn't get out. I felt as if my insides had been hollowed out, and all I could feel was endless emptiness. Obviously, one second we were still planning the future in the library, and the next second, when I was happily writing down the list of our common life goals, he suddenly told me, Arya, stop writing. Let's break up. I have to admit that those 5 words were so powerful that they could instantly break down my thinking ability. My expression at that time must have been like a computer suddenly freezing for a second. After being stunned, I smiled faintly in a trance. Phoenix, today isn't April Fool's Day. He slowly pulled my fingers that were grasping his forearm apart one by one, said, Sorry, Arya, the person I like isn't you, and then couldn't wait to get up and leave. At that time, I couldn't figure out his words at all. I would even take the initiative to find reasons for him, just like the plots in TV dramas. Did he have an incurable disease and deliberately let me leave, or did he encounter some difficulties and had to break up with me? Unfortunately, it was none of those reasons. Phoenix, simply didn't like me. When I was still in a daze and lay in the dormitory for 3 days but still wanted to salvage this relationship and went to find him, I saw the scene where he was holding a girl in his arms and gently kissing her cheek. I wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes, walked up to him, and asked in a hoarse voice, Phoenix, tell me, were the 3 years of our relationship all fake? Were all the words of your liking fake? The sun was shining brightly that day, but I felt so cold. Phoenix frowned and silently looked at me. Before he could speak, the girl beside him raised her eyebrows disdainfully, picked up her mobile phone, and handed it to me. It was the message she sent to Phoenix on the day Phoenix broke up with me. I give up, Phoenix. If you appear in front of me immediately, I'll be with you. At first, I didn't understand the reason. Until later, my roommates spent a week using their extensive network of contacts to piece together a rough truth. The girl who was with Phoenix was named Daphne. They were high school classmates. Phoenix had liked her for a long time, but she liked Phoenix's roommate, liked Phoenix's brother, but just didn't like Phoenix. Probably to spite her, Phoenix chose to pursue me. So all his kindness and gentleness towards me were just to make another girl jealous. As for why it was me? Perhaps when he needed a tool to use, I happened to appear in front of him. Or perhaps it was like what he once said while rubbing my head, "Arya, why are you so easy to deceive?" Actually, no one knew the reason. However, his goal was achieved. Daphne finally chose him. But that was the first time I had carefully, sincerely liked someone after going through primary school, junior high school, and high school in an orderly manner and entering the university in a daze. Finally, my sincere heart was mercilessly broken by him. In fact, after knowing the truth, I didn't have any extra emotions. I just felt numb, but my 3 roommates, in order to avenge me, asked their boyfriends to beat Phoenix up one night. Then they dialed my WeChat video and asked him to apologize to me. At that time, looking at him on the other side of the video with a bruised cheek and bleeding lips, I calmly looked at him for a moment and then said in a low voice, "There's no need to apologize. Phoenix, congratulations. You won." I won't fall into the same trap twice. Nobody understands better than I do that if the beginning is false, there will never be a result. So when Silas said that sentence, "But I really like you," perhaps because of the pain brought by the rush of memories or because the alcohol hit me too hard later, for the first time, I abandoned the politeness and propriety I should have and attacked him. "Really? Huh, Silas, you can't even tell whether your own memories are real or false. What are you talking about when it comes to sincerity? You say you like me. Then do you know how we met? Do you know what memories we have between us? You don't know. You know nothing. You just mistook that you liked me because of the confusion of memories after waking up. Or is it because of my face? Love at first sight? No. Is it lust at first sight? Silas, please, just leave me alone." Once, when facing Phoenix who had the same identity as me, I was helpless after being hurt, not to mention now that he and I are in a completely unequal position. At the end of the memory, Silas, with slightly red eyes, emphasized to me somewhat obsessively, "It's not love at first sight driven by lust. It's that I truly like you." It wasn't until I woke up in bed the next day that I realized what I had said to Silas the night before. After being panicked for a second, I gave up struggling. Somehow, I felt that Silas wouldn't do anything to me. And that was indeed the case. Since then, he hadn't shown up in front of me again. Even my agent curiously asked, "I haven't seen Silas for a long time. Is it that his memory has returned to normal and he found out that you're not his true love?" I didn't answer. But soon I noticed something was wrong. It started when I was harassed by a male star during an audition for a play. The other party was a popular young actor who had become famous recently because of a Xianxia drama. Relying on his high popularity, he was domineering on the set. He not only randomly asked to change the script but also wanted to control the choice of the female lead. After I finished auditioning for the role of the female lead, I received an invitation from him. Although I didn't accept it, I couldn't stop him from coming up to me on his own initiative and then saying to me as if he was being merciful, "Arya, you've acted in quite a few plays, but you're still not very famous. The competition for the female lead in this play is especially fierce. I think it's quite uncertain for you. But if I recommend you, the director might give me some face." I looked at him calmly. "So?" He seemed certain that I would agree and smiled. "We can cultivate our feelings first, so that it will be more realistic when we act." I knew that in this situation, I had no way out and could only choose to withdraw. Unexpectedly, after I tried hard to maintain my calm and politely refused, he stopped smiling and angrily said to my leaving back, "I'm giving you a chance because I think highly of you, Arya. You're really ungrateful. Do you know how many people are waiting for this opportunity?" Later, after I had already given up on this play and was preparing to audition for other plays, that popular young actor was suddenly exposed for tax evasion and sleeping with his fans. Before the studio had time to send a lawyer's letter to warn the rumor mongers, all the evidence had been packaged and spread all over the internet. The next day, the director told me that I had passed the audition for the female lead and the male lead had also been replaced. All these changes were too mysterious, and I couldn't help but feel strange. But before I could think carefully about whether it had anything to do with Silas, I got another piece of news. The theme song of this play would be sung by Phoenix. He would also make a guest appearance as a singer in the play. I saw Phoenix on the second day after the filming of the play started. Just like before, no matter where it was, as long as he was there, he would always be the most dazzling one. The first scene we filmed was the plot where the singer he was playing as a guest made a confession to me at a concert. The background of the story was that we had been childhood sweethearts for 20 years. I liked him so much that everyone knew it, but every time he just smiled and said that he only regarded me as a sister. He changed girlfriends one after another. It wasn't until I was finally about to give up on him that he suddenly realized his mistake and wanted to keep me. So, there was this concert confession. The moment the lights came on, the picture of Phoenix holding a guitar appeared in front of me. He was wearing the simplest black t-shirt, long pants, and white sneakers, and a baseball cap, plucking the strings of the guitar in the middle of the stage. I stood under the noisy stage, and my memory was instantly pulled back to that summer night when he confessed to me. The playground, roses, the evening breeze, and countless schoolmates who came to watch the fun surrounded me, and I watched him holding a guitar and smiling at me. At that time, all kinds of scenes of him chasing me flashed through my mind. He struck up a conversation in a way that could be seen through at a glance under the pretext of truth or dare. After pretending to enter the wrong classroom and sitting next to me in class, he smiled without blushing or panting and said, "What a coincidence, classmate Aria." He got into every aspect of my life. When I was trapped in the library by heavy rain in the middle of the night, he would suddenly appear with an umbrella. When I sprained my ankle while climbing a mountain, he would forcibly carry me down the mountain to the hospital. When I was harassed by a drunk boy at a party, he would kick him away without hesitation. I asked him what he wanted to do. He smiled cleanly and gently, like the fragrance of lemons in a glass bottle in summer, and turned his head to ask me, "Can't you tell? I'm chasing you." One scene after another finally converged on him playing the guitar on the playground, bright and vivid. Then he walked up to me with a bouquet of roses and said loudly, "I want to make everyone know that I, Phoenix, like Aria." Liar. In the gradually fading memories, my thoughts finally returned to reality. Phoenix had already walked off the stage, holding the flowers, finished saying the lines of the confession to me, and was looking down at me intently. There was silence all around. I took a step back, raised my face to look at him, and showed a relieved smile. "It's too late." The frozen picture ended with the director shouting, "Cut, perfect." The makeup artist excitedly said while touching up my makeup, "Aria, you performed so well just now. You got into the role so quickly in the first scene. Your emotions were super in place, and the sense of substitution was very strong, as if it were real. Even Phoenix was brought into the role by you." I heard that he still had red eyes after going out just now. It's typical of being too deeply into the role. My hand that was flipping through the script paused slightly, and I didn't say anything actually. I was quite surprised when Phoenix didn't end up with Daphne and instead suddenly regretted it and came to find me. It was in the 3rd month after we broke up. In late autumn, he appeared in the night under my dormitory building, wearing a black windbreaker, his eyebrows and eyes tinged with a touch of coldness, and there was a faint smell of alcohol in the air. I was passing by with books in my arms when he grabbed my forearm, and his hoarse voice rang in my ear, "I broke up with her." Almost instantly, I understood what he meant. Restraining the dull pain in my chest, I smiled and asked him, "So what, Phoenix? Did you find that it wasn't suitable to be with her and want to turn back? Do I deserve to be a cheap tool between you two? Do you think I'll fall for the same liar twice? It's too late. It's just too late." I saw Silas again when Phoenix and I were filming the second and also the last scene with each other. It was the scene in my memory where he taught me to sing. By the scenic lake on the university campus, with students and passers-by coming and going, Phoenix and I were sitting on the public bench by the lake. He took out the printed lyrics and taught me to sing sentence by sentence. In fact, this scene only needed a hazy, silent memory scene. But the director probably wanted a more realistic effect, so he asked Phoenix to teach me any song casually. Only by fully immersing myself in it would I forget that I was acting. The song we sang was a Cantonese song, Better Not to Meet. In fact, he was the one who taught me this song. At that time, I was forced to participate in the music festival held by the school. I didn't know any songs except the national anthem and children's songs, and I had no idea what to do. It was Phoenix who taught me from rhythm to tone bit by bit. When I forgot the lyrics and sang the wrong tune countless times and wanted to give up, he encouraged me. When I stood on the stage, holding the microphone and trembling with nervousness, he raised the sunflower hydrogen balloon to the highest point, and there was written on it, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Later, I never listened to that song again. As my thoughts came back, I had already sung to the last sentence with his voice. It was at this time that out of the corner of my eye, I suddenly saw a familiar figure in the hexagonal pavilion in the middle of the lake. He was wearing a black shirt with the cuffs rolled up to his elbows, was thin, and had his hands in his pockets, looking in my direction. It was quite far away, and I couldn't see the face clearly at all, but I could be sure that it was Silas. It was the Silas who hadn't shown up in front of me after I begged him to leave me alone but would secretly follow me behind. I discovered this because one night I suddenly wanted to eat fried rice cakes from a snack street near the university. I wanted to eat them for no reason, so I secretly left the hotel, put on a mask, and scanned a small electric bike to go there. At first, everything went smoothly. The change happened when I accidentally made eye contact with a classmate while squatting beside the trash can eating the rice cakes. 3 minutes later, more and more people gathered around, and an excited and strange atmosphere appeared in the air. More and more people were whispering my name. Until a male classmate suddenly shouted loudly, "It's her! It's her! Aria! It's Aria!" My mind went blank for a moment. I picked up the unfinished fried rice cakes and ran towards the small electric bike not far away. A large group of people carrying all kinds of fried skewers followed behind me. Just when I was worried that the hot search the next day would say, actress Aria was chased half a street by college students while eating fried skewers in the middle of the night. All the loudspeakers on the small carts in the whole street were repeatedly shouting the same sentence, "All college students can eat for free at this booth. Only for tonight." Finally, after those college students unhesitatingly chose food over me, I successfully got on the small electric bike. When I stuffed the last bite of the rice cake into my mouth and was about to leave, I looked back. It was that look back that I saw in that long street full of the flavor of daily life. There was a tall and straight figure standing there. Through the chaotic crowd, he just stood there quietly, watching me turn around and ride away. The next day, everything was calm. Nobody knew that I secretly ran out to eat fried rice cakes in the middle of the night and was chased. Nor did anyone know who paid for everyone that night. I decided to thank Silas on the second day after I finished filming. Although I vaguely felt that doing so would make our relationship even more complicated, he had indeed helped me twice after all. So I went to his company, and then was protected by him once again there. The incident happened when we were going downstairs. 2 workers carrying large pieces of glass passed by us, bumped into the big floor-standing vase at the corner, and then fell down. In that dizzying second, I was hugged into Silas's arms. At the same time, a huge sound of glass shattering came to my ears. I was unharmed, while Silas's calf was scratched by the glass and had to be stitched up with 9 stitches. He didn't need to be hospitalized and just recuperated at home. The blood case, caused by a meal, was completely beyond my expectation. Although Silas told me over and over again that it had nothing to do with me, I knew very well that I was partly to blame. To ease my guilt, I would bring nutritious meals and fruits to visit him every day, hoping that he would get better soon. I also expressed my gratitude to him for protecting me when I was harassed during the audition and when I was discovered eating fried rice cakes. After listening to me, he sat on the soft chair and handed me the peeled apple, seeming not to care much. I also invested in that drama. I always have to consider the risks. If he hadn't done those things, his scandals wouldn't have been discovered. That was the period when I had the most frequent contact with him since we met. Unexpectedly, I found that he could cook. At that time, his injury had almost healed. When I visited him, I happened to see him cooking soup. In the open kitchen, he was wearing a grayish-white round-neck hoodie. His unkempt hair softly hung on his forehead, making him look a bit gentler than his usual imposing self, and somehow he looked a bit like a male college student. Later, when I was thinking about how to tell him that since he had recovered, I wouldn't come to visit him anymore, he handed me a bowl of soup. It was precisely that bowl of soup that made me realize how unpalatable the meals I had cooked and sent to him every day were. To ease the embarrassment, I smiled and praised him. I didn't expect that you could cook. Why would you think so? Because people like you in TV dramas are always otherworldly. He was stunned for a few seconds, and then curved his lips and smiled softly. I can not only cook but also clean, be sad, and, like someone. I avoided his gaze that was looking at me, unnaturally smoothed my hair, felt the sudden stickiness and heat in the air, and my inexplicably accelerated heartbeat, and began to have the urge to escape. Actually, I had seriously thought that if the person I met back then wasn't Phoenix but Silas at this time, I would definitely be with him without hesitation, but everyone knows that such an if would never exist. I'm no longer the little girl who was so brave in love before, and he actually doesn't really like me either. It was already evening. The setting sun outside the window made the sky look like molten gold, and half of Silas's body seemed to be coated with orange golden light. Probably seeing what was on my mind, he said to me without hiding anything, "Arya, liking someone isn't based on memories." After a short silence, I forced a distant smile. "Silas, since your calf has healed, I won't come to visit you anymore." This was to reject him and also to remind myself. Before leaving, he held my wrist and suppressed his tone. "Don't you have the slightest bit of feelings for me?" I pretended to be relaxed and looked at him. "No, actually," I lied. How could I not be the least bit moved by someone who remembered my preferences, would stand up for me when I was bullied, would help me escape when I was recognized while sneaking out to eat fried rice cakes in the middle of the night, and would protect me at the first sign of danger? But I had to cut my losses in time. So to stay away from him temporarily and let time calm down my surging emotions, I asked my agent to accept a public welfare movie with the theme of a rural teacher and went to the mountainous area to film. However, it was precisely this filming that made me completely fall for him. After the movie was successfully completed, the unexpected event happened 3 days before we were ready to leave. Continuous heavy rain triggered a mountain torrent. While looking for a student in the night, I rolled down the slope. Those were almost the worst 2 days in my life. I once doubted that I would die in that narrow gap with continuous heavy rain, but I didn't die because Silas found me. It was quite miraculous actually. From the accident with the props on the set, to the glass shattering, and then to rolling down the slope in the mountain torrent, Silas was present at all 3 dangerous moments I had encountered in my life. When he walked towards me step by step in the torrential rain and stood in front of me, I even thought it was an illusion and called out cautiously, "Silas." His eyes immediately turned red. He squatted in front of me and said, "It's me." Later, he avoided my injured calf, put the raincoat on me, bent down to pick me up, and tried his best to shield me from the rain with his body while walking in the heavy rain. It was not until the rain gradually stopped that he carried me on his back instead, probably worried that I would fall asleep. He kept finding topics to talk about. In fact, we had very few common topics. In the end, he even started to analyze the latest stock market situation for me. I couldn't help but lean weakly on his shoulder and laugh, and then said an irrelevant sentence. "Silas, it would have been nice if I had met you earlier." He immediately took my words and said in a very low and hoarse voice, "It's not too late to meet now. But I've already locked up that silly and weak Arya from before and I won't be easily moved anymore." He asked very patiently, "Why lock her up?" "Because she won't be hurt if locked up." "Then hand her over to me. Let me protect her, okay?" My only vague memory ended here. When I regained consciousness again, I was already lying in the hospital. My agent was holding an orange in one hand and half of the orange peel in the other, describing the scene at that time to me in an extremely exaggerated way. She said that when Silas showed up with others, it was like the arrival of a god. She said that when Silas carried me back, he was in a mess but protected me very well. She said that Silas, regardless of his own wounds, firmly insisted that the accompanying doctor check my condition first. There was a faint orange fragrance in the air. I listened to her chatter in silence and clearly realized one thing: I seemed to owe Silas more and more favors. Later, when Silas showed up in the ward with a thermos box in the evening and handed me a bowl of fish soup with a familiar taste, I held the white porcelain bowl and said to him, "Silas, let's be a real couple." Not the fake couple in his confused memories, but a real couple who decided to be together after going from being strangers to knowing each other and then having feelings for each other. But his reaction was beyond my expectation. After frowning and looking at me for a long time, he said in a deep voice, "Aria, I saved you not to make you repay me with your body." I once saw a term on the internet called repetitive experience of trauma, which means that if one has experienced a failed relationship before, whenever encountering similar situations in the future, those sad, angry, and fearful scenes will uncontrollably reappear in one's mind. The failed relationship with Phoenix made me completely lose the courage to enter a new relationship again because I was afraid of being hurt again. I admit that there was an element of gambling when I chose to be with Silas, but I was still willing to believe again. After all, when he appeared in the heavy rain, he really made me have a heartbeat that I could hardly ignore. So after he said that sentence, I held his hand and said very frankly, "You said that liking someone isn't based on memories. Silas, I believe you. I decided to be with you not to repay you, but because I really like you." I think I will always remember his expression at that time. From silence to shock and then to surprise, he then hugged me tightly in his arms with slightly trembling hands, and his voice was extremely hoarse. "Aria, I won't let you down." Later, he was really nice to me. He, who was always serious at work, would leave the gentlest side for me, only for me. He clearly wanted the whole world to know about our relationship, but because of my saying that I didn't want to make it public for the time being, he was willing to be my secret lover. One of his friends once asked him curiously what he loved about me. Even if it was because of the confused memories, there should be a reason for that love, such as beauty, gentleness, cuteness, intelligence, or something else. At that time, Silas was hugging me, who was pretending to be asleep after getting drunk, and said calmly, "There's no reason." This answer actually sounded a bit ridiculous in their circle, because for people like them, interests were above everything else, including feelings. At least that's how it seemed to me at that time. His need was an emotional one. Until one time when he attended a commercial event, near the end, a reporter boldly asked him, "What are Silas's criteria for choosing a partner?" This kind of question involving the private domain usually wouldn't appear in interviews about him. But perhaps the netizens were really curious about this too young head of the Silas family, or maybe he seemed to be in a good mood during that interview, which made the reporter take a chance to ask. And after a long silence, Silas surprisingly answered her, "There are no criteria for choosing a partner. There's only her." This sentence later sparked discussions among countless netizens. I held my tablet and read thousands of comments. Some people guessed that he already had someone he liked, and some people guessed that he was already in a relationship. The comment with the most likes was the interpretation of that sentence: "When she appears, all criteria become invalid." After reading it over and over again, I thought it sounded reasonable, so I asked him if that's what he meant. He was peeling an orange for me at that time. Hearing me read out the netizen's interpretation, he said calmly, "It can be understood that way, but that's not what I meant." I subconsciously asked him, "Then what do you mean?" "Before you appeared, I couldn't imagine what kind of person I would like in the future. When you appeared, it could only be you." Silas and I had been together for 8 months, and our relationship had encountered 2 twists and turns. The first one was due to the appearance of Phoenix. It was a social cocktail party in the entertainment circle. I didn't know he would be there when I was invited to attend. However, the entertainment circle is neither too big nor too small. In fact, I had never deliberately avoided him. After all, I had a clear conscience and there was no need to hide from someone just because of a past relationship. After the party, I was stopped by Phoenix beside the stairs at an exit. His slender fingers circled around my wrist and pulled me into his arms. He whispered in my ear, "Arya, I really regret it." He had done something like this once when he made a guest appearance in my drama before, but at that time, he wasn't drunk and just asked me soberly if I could trust him again. I found it rather ridiculous, so I asked him, "Phoenix, have you never been deceived by anyone?" Once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to restore it to its original state. And the consequence of forcing it is that the one who is deceived will constantly be suspicious, doubtful, and testy, and finally fall into a hysterical and out-of-control state. So when he was again stubbornly saying that he regretted it and wanted to win me back, I tried my best to suppress the discomfort in my heart and asked him, "Phoenix, what have I done to make you think that there's a possibility for me to come back to you? So you keep pestering me again and again?" There was a strong smell of alcohol on him. I frowned, trying to bring him back to his senses. "We're all adults. I won't deliberately deceive your feelings for revenge. If you keep holding on, it'll just waste both of our time." Probably because the alcohol had taken control of his brain and refused to listen to any words, he held my waist tightly and wouldn't let go, repeatedly saying sorry and asking me to give him another chance. Just when my patience was running out and I was considering whether to shout for help loudly, I was suddenly pulled forcefully into another embrace. The familiar scent rushed towards me. It was Silas. He hugged my shoulders tightly. His face looked normal, but I knew that he was angry. The angrier he was, the calmer he seemed. "Does Phoenix like to pester other people's girlfriends so much?" This was the first time that Silas mentioned our relationship in front of others. Phoenix, who managed to stand firm by leaning against the wall after being pushed away, lost all the color on his face when he heard this. After looking at me for a long time, he finally called out in a trembling voice, "Arya." I calmly met his gaze and introduced with a smile, "My boyfriend, Silas." Later, Silas didn't give him another chance to speak and directly took me away, but on the way back, he was unusually silent. I chose my words carefully and didn't explain to him until we got home. I didn't expect to meet him. Almost at the same time, he pushed me against the door, bent down, and said in a muffled voice in my neck, "I know, Arya, I know everything. It was he who didn't cherish you and hurt you. It was he who regretted it and came to pester you. But I'm still jealous that you were with him before." I was quite sure that Silas must have had someone investigate my past with Phoenix, so I could only smile helplessly. "I haven't liked him for a long time." He pressed me closer to his chest, his breathing became a bit heavier, and then he seemed to compromise and said, "I want to hold you for a while longer." After that, I thought this matter had passed, until I heard people in the circle talking about Phoenix, saying that he seemed to have offended someone and had lost 8 endorsements in a row and 3 events had been suddenly cancelled, but no one knew exactly who he had offended. I took this rumor to Silas and asked if it was him who did it. He put down the documents in his hand and admitted it frankly, "It was me." In his slightly tense expression, I smiled at him gently, "TSK, it feels so good to have someone to back me up." If our relationship deepened because of Phoenix, then when the bracelet designed and handmade by the famous Italian designer was sent over, it was as if our relationship was suddenly torn open. All kinds of sad, sorrowful, sour, and aggrieved emotions began to spread throughout my whole body along this opening. After the young and elegant designer took out the bracelet, he said that according to the requirements put forward by Silas at that time, it took him 5 years to design and make it, and it was unique. At that time, Silas said that he was going to give it to a very important person, but he didn't mention the name of that person. Now Silas had long forgotten who that person was. At first, the designer didn't know that Silas had an accident and forgot the memory about the bracelet, so he didn't notice Silas' gradually furrowed brows and just repeated what Silas had said. "You said at that time that although the girl didn't know you, she was the person who could make your heart flutter whenever you thought of her. Even if you couldn't be with her, you hoped that she would be happy. Then he looked at me, who had been standing silently beside Silas, and said, as if suddenly realizing something, "It must be this beautiful lady. You and Silas are a perfect match." I always maintained a proper smile and told him in his wrong guess, "It's not me." Later, Silas sat in front of that bracelet from dusk until nightfall. Finally, in the snowy night outside the window, he said to me nervously as his first sentence, "Although I don't know who I intended to give it to at that time, I'm quite sure that I won't fall in love with anyone except you, Arya. Believe me." I propped my chin up and looked at the first snow outside the window and said an irrelevant sentence. I asked him, "Silas, this is the first snow we've watched together since we were together. Is it nice?" He restrainedly held my hand, not looking at the snow but only at me. "I'll watch the first snow with you every year in the future." I smiled relievedly and tilted my head to him. "I believe you, Silas." I believed that he loved me at this moment, but I couldn't persuade myself to believe that the owner of the bracelet wasn't the person he had loved before. Even it could be said that if it hadn't been for that accident, Silas would still be in love with her. Perhaps my expression when I answered him was too calm, or perhaps the belief he wanted was too easily obtained. Anyway, various complicated factors piled up together, which made him feel extremely insecure for a long time later, and he often said to me, "I always feel that you'll leave me. What should I do?" I laughed at him. "Silas, it's clearly me who should be the one without a sense of security." But what I didn't say was that his feeling was right. I would leave him, but not now. It would be when the Silas who deeply loved someone else appeared. However, I didn't expect that day would come suddenly when I was completely unprepared. It was on the day when I won an award. It wasn't a very big award, but I hadn't been in the entertainment circle for a long time. From starting as an extra to becoming known for playing a vicious female supporting role, and then playing some leading roles without much popularity, any award recognition was a huge encouragement for me. Silas wouldn't interfere with my acting career. He would only accompany me to rehearse in his free time, listen to me analyze the psychological changes of the characters, and comfort me when I failed an audition. "Maybe there will be a more suitable role for you next time, Arya, you'll succeed." He had been by my side watching me progress step by step and understood my feelings when I won the award better than anyone else. So to congratulate me, when I got in the car with him to go back after receiving the award, the sky on both sides of the river was filled with exploding fireworks. The accident also happened at this time. When passing through a green light, a truck that had lost control suddenly rushed out from the left. Silas quickly turned the steering wheel. After a sharp sound of tires rubbing against the ground, the car hit the guardrail on the roadside. The airbags popped out, and all kinds of chaotic sounds gradually became blurred and distant. Fortunately, this car accident wasn't serious. Even the driver of the out-of-control truck just had a broken arm. But Silas' memory returned to normal. When I woke up in the hospital and rushed to Silas' ward in a panic and saw him with a circle of gauze around his head, looking at me with puzzled eyes and calling me Arya in confusion, I knew that it was over between us. At that moment, it felt as if the heart that had been hanging in the air finally fell heavily to the ground. From then on, I didn't need to worry about it anymore, but at the same time, my whole body seemed to lose strength instantly, as if it took all my strength to say to him, "Sorry, I walked into the wrong ward." I went back to a world where I was alone again. After my agent learned about the situation, she asked me tactfully, "Why don't you go and tell him?" Because he already had someone he loved. That bracelet was the best evidence. Rather than facing his doubts, constantly proving and forcing a love that no longer belonged to me, it was really meaningless. It would be better to film 2 more dramas. I would be sad, sorrowful, and painful, but I could still live a good life. However, I didn't expect that Silas would come to me a week later. At that time, I had just finished filming for the day and returned to the hotel a bit tired. When I got out of the elevator and was about to open the door, suddenly I heard a familiar, deep voice behind me, "Arya." My back instantly tensed up and I turned around to look. He was leaning casually against the wall beside the elevator not far away. The light from the ceiling lamp fell on him. His hair was a bit messy, his figure was slender and straight, and he still had those deep and handsome features. It seemed that nothing had changed, yet it also seemed that everything had changed. When our eyes met, he walked up to me silently on the carpet, slightly lowered his head, opened the folder in his hand seriously, and said to me word by word, although I don't remember, according to the evidence I've found in this week. Dates, cohabitation, and all kinds of intimate behaviors including but not limited to holding hands and hugging. So, we are now in a legitimate and reasonable couple relationship. Right? Then before I could react to the huge amount of information, he took out the bracelet from his pocket, the one that he didn't know what to do with at first, and finally asked the designer to take it back, and handed it to me. Arya, this was originally meant to be given to you. I had imagined countless scenarios of meeting Silas again, but I never expected that he would come to me with all the evidence that we had once been in love and tell me, Arya, from the very beginning, I came for you. So, when there was an accident during the crew visit before, he had come to see me. And when the props fell down, it was he who blocked them for me. Perhaps my thinking became slow after a day's work. It took me a while to understand what he said. Then I was filled with confusion and shock and blurted out straightforwardly, "You liked me long ago?" He smiled and showed his sincerity without any concealment. "Yes, I liked you long ago." When I recalled the ups and downs of my mood at this moment a long, long time later, I still felt that it was far stronger than any emotions I had experienced in any film or TV drama. From the initially restrained and repressed heartache, to the surprise when he showed up, then to the inexplicable grievance when he was so certain that I was his girlfriend, and finally to the astonishment when he told me that he had liked me long ago. But even though my emotions were already like huge waves inside, my expression had been surprisingly calm from beginning to end. I even curiously asked him, "How long ago?" "I'm not sure. If I must give a specific time, it was when you were in your sophomore year. I attended an activity at your school on behalf of the Silas family group, and you gave me flowers as a volunteer that time." To be honest, I actually had a deep memory of that day, but it wasn't about Silas. It was because I was in a hurry to celebrate Phoenix's birthday. So after anxiously waiting backstage until it was time to go on stage to give flowers, I didn't even notice who the person was that took the flowers from my hands. I tightened my hands hanging by my side and said somewhat dryly, "At that time, I was with Phoenix." He was silent for a few seconds and then said in a calm voice, "I know, so I didn't disturb you." After a long gaze at each other, Silas reached out his hand to me and asked me, "Arya, are you still willing to be with me?" In this very second, no matter how chaotic my thoughts were, I could still feel my heart beating violently. Facing his outstretched hand, I couldn't say the words of refusal. Later, when I recalled this moment, I asked him what he would have done if I had chosen to refuse. When I asked him, we were watching a youth campus movie I starred in at the cinema. Coincidentally, it was at the end of the movie, and the picture was frozen on the back view of me wearing a high school uniform and standing in the long corridor against the light. Silas's eyes had been fixed on the screen, and his voice sounded a bit empty. "Then I would have chased you again." This question actually didn't make much sense, but suddenly I wanted to know what our fates would have been like if there hadn't been that accident back then. Regarding this doubt, Silas took a bunch of data analysis charts and planning books with derivation steps after we went back. Then, under my incredulous look, he explained somewhat unnaturally, "I've been educated since childhood that if I want to achieve a result, then the development of each step needs to be well planned and within control." It was my first time chasing a girl. I didn't know how to start, so I could only choose the best one from all the designed plans. Going to the film set that time was the first step of my plan, but it didn't go well at the beginning, which led to all the processes going wrong. Fortunately, the result was right. The process of Silas and I falling in love was really chaotic. I originally thought that my entanglement with him was insincere, but later I learned that it had been sincere from the very beginning. And I had thought that my relationship with Phoenix was genuine, but later I found out that it had been false all along. I saw Phoenix again one night after the filming of my new drama was completed. He was waiting for me on the road that I had to pass. The street lamp elongated his shadow, making it look rather desolate. When he saw me, he took out a concert ticket from his pocket. Back then, you said that if I held a concert, you would sit in the seat closest to me. I looked down at the ticket in front of me but didn't take it. If I remembered correctly, this should be his first concert. Although he had burst onto the music scene and became famous with one song back then, he had never held a concert. During the quiet few seconds, a young couple of college students passed by on a small electric bike nearby. The fallen leaves along the road were stirred up by the wheels and then slowly fell down again, as if nothing had happened. I looked up at him, put my hands into the pockets of my coat, and while he still maintained the posture of handing me the ticket, I turned sideways and walked towards the black Bentley hidden in the night not far away. When passing by him, I left a sentence, "It's all in the past." Later, on the day of his concert, Silas proposed to me. There wasn't a luxurious and elaborate scene, nor a romantic and sensational atmosphere. In a quiet and elegant park, after we had dinner together and went for a walk, he held my hand casually and said, "The moon is so beautiful tonight. I really want to take it home." I looked up and found that because it was a cloudy day, the night sky was filled with dark and light clouds. The moon was hidden behind the thick clouds, and only a faint outline could be seen. So I smiled and asked him, "Is it a hazy beauty?" Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks and unexpectedly knelt down on one knee in front of me, raising a ring that I didn't know when he had prepared, looking at me tenderly and said, "What I mean is, you are so beautiful tonight. I want to marry you and take you home, Aria. Marry me." The next day, the topics related to Phoenix's concert occupied the top of the hot search list. The one that ranked first was, Azure Future. Suddenly, I remembered that during a live interview before, he had said that he would tell everyone the meaning of Azure Future at the concert. The second hot search topic was, 10-second vacancy. It was at the concert venue. After singing Azure Future, Phoenix suddenly stopped and looked at an empty seat quietly for about 10 seconds. I didn't look at the other hot search topics. Instead, I posted a photo of the moon taken the night before and captioned it, "The moon said yes." Silas leaned over to take a look and then made a tisk sound meaningfully saying, "My underground lover who couldn't see the light finally got a glimpse of the daylight." When I heard this sentence, my heart skipped a beat for a second. I knew the reason clearly. It was because of the Silas with the confused memory who had disappeared, and that memory that only I remembered. I originally thought that this would become a regret in my whole life. It wasn't until the wedding night a long time later, after Silas tore off his gentlemanly disguise without any scruples, when I was forced to feel the boundary between being sober and being lost. He leaned close to my neck and said in a hoarse voice, "Honey, I seem to have remembered something recently." I managed to spare a bit of my mind from the extreme pleasure and asked him, "What?" "I remembered that you once said that it would have been nice if you had met me earlier." After being slow to react for half a minute, I finally understood what he meant. Those extremely private conversations couldn't be found out unless he remembered them by himself. But before I had time to continue asking, he took me into deeper torment. Later, when his memory had completely recovered, I asked him why he didn't verify it at that time but just took it for granted that I was his girlfriend. Obviously, as long as he went to check, he would find that I had nothing to do with him. He slightly raised his eyebrows at the end of his eyes and asked me casually, "How do you know that I didn't check?" I was even more surprised. "You checked and still took it for granted that I was your girlfriend?" As soon as I finished speaking, he reached out and pulled me into his arms and said slowly, as if hiding infinite affection, "People only believe what they want to believe." At that time, I only wanted to believe. I love you. Extra Story 1 Phoenix. After the drama in which I made a guest appearance was broadcast, Aria became famous. Surprisingly, among the huge number of fans of the main couple's CP, a group of extremely active, first love, CP fans of me and Aria emerged. The plot where we were in the same frame for less than 10 minutes was cut into hundreds of videos by video editors. Some people also dug out every time we were in the same frame outside the drama, including the scenes where I was looking at her on the set and the scenes where we passed by each other at event venues. Even during the process of digging into the past, some people found out that Aria and I were alumni and had really been together before, and we were each other's first love. But there were too many messages in the entertainment industry that were hard to tell whether they were true or false. Except for the parties involved, no one knew the truth. It was as if except for me, no one knew why I had been with Aria back then. The first time I met her wasn't that clumsy conversation under the pretext of truth or dare in the lounge bar. It was when I was waiting for someone near the box where she and her friends were during a friend's party. Because the door wasn't closed, I heard her singing. Looking through the half-open door with light and shadows, my sight happened to fall on her slender figure and gentle side face. I was very curious. How could someone sing without hitting a single note right? But the lyrics of the Cantonese song, Better Not to Meet, were pronounced clearly and smoothly by her. Combined with her unique voice, it gave people the illusion that she was whispering sweet nothings. When my friend came over and asked me what I was smiling at, I came back to my senses and left. Later, after Daphne, whom I had liked throughout high school, got together with my roommate, I suddenly didn't want to like her anymore. So when I met Aria for the second time, I used the excuse of a dare to get to know her and then chased her through various carefully arranged chance encounters. After I chased her without almost any obstacles, a friend once patted me on the shoulder and sighed, "A girl like her is the kind who will never look back once hurt. She seems innocent, but she's more sober than anyone else." I just smiled indifferently at that time and didn't care. After that, Aria and I had a wonderful time together. Every time I finished singing, she was always the most enthusiastic one. She would hold my arm and say, "Phoenix, you sing so beautifully. You will definitely become very famous in the future. When you hold a concert, I will sit in the seat closest to you." I, Aria, will always be Phoenix's most loyal listener. But in the end, I still lost this lovely, best, and loyal listener. I have to admit that every time I met Daphne after being with Aria, I would have the idea of competing with her and would be nicer to Aria in front of her. It wasn't until I received her message in the library. I don't know how to describe how I felt at that moment. There was happiness, excitement, swelling, and a touch of indescribable complexity. There is such a debate topic in international debate competitions. Which is more regrettable, something you can't get or something you've already lost? Most people don't realize how important what they've lost is when they are chasing something they can't get unless they experience it themselves. So, I lost Aria forever. During the 3 months when I was with Daphne, I often stared at her face in a daze. When I found something interesting, I would subconsciously open the chat box with Aria and then suddenly realize in the second before sending the message that we had broken up. At first, I thought it was a habit formed in 3 years. Later, I found out that it was reluctance, love, and that I still wanted to be with her. 3 months later, I and Daphne broke up. I used the 3 years with Aria to get the 3 months with Daphne, and finally, it only proved that Daphne and I were really not suitable. Since then, I've tried countless times to win Aria back, but all in vain. In the middle of the night when I woke up from my dreams, it was always her voice saying to me, "Phoenix, congratulations. You won." In fact, when I didn't hesitate to give up Aria, I had already realized that we were in the latter part of 2 intersecting lines. The road ahead was long, and we would never walk side by side again. But I still tried again and again, unwilling to give up. I called her during the live interview, made a guest appearance in her new drama, taught her to sing the old songs, and invited her to my first concert. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. She didn't come to the concert. In the packed venue with a huge crowd, after singing The Future in Azure, I looked at the seat that had been empty from the beginning to the end, and suddenly felt as if all my strength had been drained. I was shrouded in a huge sense of sadness and loneliness. The next day, on the hot search, there was my explanation of The Future in Azure at the concert, the blue future. While I was numbly scrolling through various comments, I noticed Arya's latest update. It was a photo of the moon. Somehow, I felt that behind this seemingly ordinary update, there should be some important and hidden meaning for her. I clicked on the CP video of Arya and me that had been looped countless times and had the highest number of views. The music accompanying it happened to be my new song. The scenes in the video started from the confession in the drama and ended with us passing by each other at an event. I thought that probably no one would ever know the real meaning of The Future in Azure, Arya, The Future. Extra Chapter 2, Silas. Even to this day, I still find it hard to believe that I fell for the same person over and over again, 4 times in total. That feeling of the heartbeat being out of control is really terrifying yet addictive. Arya probably didn't know that I met her earlier than Phoenix did. In the second year of senior high school, because there was an influenza outbreak at school, I got infected and didn't receive timely treatment. I fainted by the artificial lake on campus due to a fever and was seen by her. She sent me to the school infirmary. In my blurred vision, I only saw half of her face blocked by a mask and her back as she left against the light. But the feeling of losing control of my heartbeat at that moment puzzled me for a long time later, and there was also an inexplicable sense of fear. Soon after, I was sent abroad, and that figure was buried deep in my memory. In the second year of college, I returned to China to attend a company meeting and also attended a ceremony at a university. I was supposed to go on stage to receive flowers. When the girl presenting the flowers handed the bouquet to me, that feeling of my heart shrinking slightly and suddenly accelerating came back again. Then on a whim, I asked someone to look up the information of that girl. After that, I took out a school badge that I had kept for 3 years. It was the one I saw beside me when I woke up in the infirmary in the second year of senior high school. They were the same person. Arya. I repeatedly savored the feeling of unexplained joy and belatedly realized that it was a crush. But she already had a boyfriend, and my education and growth experience told me that I shouldn't touch anything or anyone that was out of control. I thought that I could restrain myself. So I only took a distant look at her and her boyfriend and didn't disturb them. When I returned to China again, I met her at a reception. When she suddenly appeared beside me and held my hand, it wasn't just my heartbeat that was out of control. My mind went blank, but I was clearer than ever that I liked her. After listening to her talk for a while with a stiff back, I finally realized that she had mistaken me for her boyfriend. No, it should be said her ex-boyfriend. After I went back that night, I stood on the terrace all night, looking at the pitch-black night sky without stars or the moon. I finally confirmed one thing: I wanted to be with Arya. But how to get to know a girl, understand her and fall in love with her in a normal way was a completely unfamiliar topic for me. So I referred to the experience of completing projects, made a lot of plans, and chose the best and most achievable one to implement. Unfortunately, before I could start, an accident happened which led to my memory disorder. I forgot and mixed up a lot of things. But I fell in love with her again and even fabricated a memory that she was my girlfriend. After going through a chaotic and terrible process, I finally became her boyfriend for real. Unfortunately, not long after that, my memory returned to normal in a not-so-serious car accident, and then I forgot the days when I pestered her and was with her. The moment I saw her when I woke up in the hospital was for me the first time I met her after returning to China, except for that reception. So out of politeness and because of the confusion of unexpectedly seeing her just after waking up, I called her Arya. Then her eyes immediately turned red. This was very strange, but I didn't know why at that time until I saw the WeChat chat records on my phone. To be honest, I didn't know whether she immediately chose to give up on me when she learned that my memory had returned to normal because of the aftereffects left by her ex-boyfriend's betrayal, or because she had filmed so many dramas and thought that people would abandon their lovers when they lost their memory. Although she didn't say anything to me, I could investigate. I could find out everything that had happened between us except for private behaviors and conversations. After getting all this evidence, I carefully reviewed the memories of that period. Then that night, I went to find her. I thought that no matter what, I had to explain it clearly to her. I had even thought it through that if she didn't want to continue to be with me, then I would pursue her again. After all, the plan I had made hadn't been officially implemented yet. Fortunately, she held my hand. Later, she asked me curiously what our development track would have been like if that accident hadn't happened. To be honest, I was also very curious. However, even if the process was different, the sincerity would be the same. After I completely recovered my memory, I remembered that a friend once asked me what I loved about her, and I said there was no reason. That's the truth. If I knew the reason for my crush on her, I would have solved the source of this terrifying yet addictive feeling at the very first moment. Unfortunately, there isn't one. She just stood there so ordinary, yet it was enough to make my heart flutter infinitely. It was as if everything around me was out of focus, and only she was real. A moment of heartbeat means eternal heartbeat. I think no one knows better than I do. Arya is the only thing out of control in my life.